In this Golf Smart Insight, we're going to look at straightening the trail leg to increase hip turn. So we like to be as specific as we can here at Golf Smart Academy. And I see a lot of videos talking about increasing, or I have students send me videos about whether to straighten the leg or keep that trail leg bent. So I'm just going to give you a little overview of how I would walk through this thought process. So one of the things that you'll see is on video, if a golfer tends to keep their trail leg bent from the down the line camera angle, you'll only be able to see a certain amount of pelvis. And then if you see them straighten their leg, you're going to be able to see more pelvis. So this is commonly thrown around as increasing your hip turn. Now I'm going to talk you through why it's not actually increasing your trail hip turn. It may actually be increasing the lead hip turn. So that's where breaking things down, looking at them logically, can help you understand why a movement may or may not be working for you or be doing the right thing that you're trying to train. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with this hip, and then we'll go through a little exercise to kind of feel what's happening and how straightening this trail leg is probably not causing you to increase the amount of turn into that trail hip. So when I make this backswing where you see a different amount of my pelvis, there's a lot of things that could do it besides hip turn. A very good reference for looking at hip rotation is looking at where the belly button or where the belt buckle would be and comparing that to where the knee is. So if I'm facing the camera just like so and my knee is facing the camera, if I turn so that my pelvis is pointed to the right of my knee, that is internal hip rotation in this trail hip. If I rotate it so that my belt buckle is pointing way to the left of where the knee is, that's external hip rotation. So what you'll frequently see is here's where I've rotated 20 degrees or so into my hip. And now if I straighten the leg, you can see that the knee changes about the same amount as the pelvis because most of the movement there may be coming from the ankle. The other common movement would be if I increase the external rotation of this trail leg, that can give the appearance that I've turned into this if I increase the external rotation, so if I'm rotating that way more with the lead leg, that'll make it look like I rotated into that trail leg even more. So if I get here and I allow this leg to straighten, what that frequently does is that allows this leg to bend a lot more and allows that hip to open up. So when this lead hip is opening up, even though I haven't really turned more into this trail hip, I've gotten more rotation. So one way to kind of feel this is if I stand on this leg and I keep my pressure even throughout my foot. So I'm going to make sure that I keep the pressure on the inside of the foot kind of like this, and I'm going to rotate while keeping that leg fairly straight, just a little bit of bend, so 10-15 degrees of bend. Now if I was to bend that knee a whole lot more, it's not going to restrict how much hip rotation I'm going to have. Now what's interesting is if I flex forward and rotate, that will tend to restrict the hip rotation a little bit. And that's partly because there's some really deep muscles that as the hip comes up get restricted when we start looking at internal hip rotation. So that's the other little piece to this puzzle is as I make a backswing, the more that I tend to straighten that trail leg, the more that I'll tend to have this hip go backward. And in order to keep my spine angle while having that hip go backward, I'm actually going to be flexing into this hip. So the more that, now it's probably only 5, 10, maybe up to 15 degrees, so it's not going to change it a ton, but the more that I flex this hip, the more that that's going to restrict the amount of actual hip rotation. So I just like to be clear as far as what's happening, and if we're looking at pelvis rotation, if we're looking at maybe it's the lead leg that's bending more. Just because we see more pelvis, we're not going to assume that it's the hips that are actually doing it, because we can think through it, we can measure it, and we can look at it and decide if it's actually increasing hip rotation by straightening the trail leg. My take is that no, it's not. You're either getting it more from the foot or you're getting it from the lead leg, but I'm not an advocate of trying to keep that knee perfectly locked or perfectly flex the same amount, because frequently what happens is these golfers tend to sway off the ball a lot more, the pressure goes to the outside of their foot, and they have trouble making solid contact on the way down. So if you like the way we break this down, check out our other videos here or submit your swing through our membership site, and we can tell you what's going on in your swing and where you can improve the fastest and what drills you should do to get there.